Welcome to Whispers Beyond, where horror, philosophy, and the unknown intertwine. New full-length stories. Every Friday, your requested nightmares. Every Wednesday, bite-sized horrors. Every Monday. And in the spaces between, whispers of poetry and philosophy. Glimpses into the abyss. Like, subscribe, and listen closely.
The Last God Standing. The story you are about to hear is not myth. It is not legend, nor fable, nor whispered superstition passed between dying tongues. It is truth. It is the thoughts and actions of a god, a being who was worshipped, feared, obeyed, a being who shaped the world in his image, whose name was once law, whose voice was once the only voice that mattered. But gods are not eternal. Not in the way you think. They do not fall to war or treachery. They do. Not shatter beneath the weight of prophecy. They fade. Not all at once, but piece by piece. A name spoken less. A temple left empty. A prayer that goes, unanswered, then unspoken. This is not the story of a god's rise. It is the story of his vanishing. It is not a tragedy. It is not a warning. It is simply what happens. Because a god is only a god for as long as someone believes in him. And once, he was everything. And now, he is nothing. I have always known one truth. Gods do not die when their bodies are broken. They die when they are forgotten. This is what separates me from them. The others, gods of war, wisdom, storms, believe in power. They carve their names into stone, raise temples, demand sacrifices. They think this will make them eternal. But stone crumbles, temples fall, blood dries, and even the most feared gods fade when their last worshipper speaks their name as a relic of the past. They call me the trickster, the liar, the shadow at the edge of their perfect celestial order. They think I am lesser because I do not shape mountains or hurl lightning, but I have seen the future. Not in prophecy. Prophecy is nothing but an elaborate con, wrapped in ritual, but in pattern. And the pattern is clear. No god will survive the turning of ages, unless I become the only one. That thought does not arrive like prophecy. It does not come from fate. It is a whisper of my own making. What if, instead of being the last to fall, I am the last to remain? I sit at the edge of existence, watching the heavens crack under their own weight. The sky is alight with divine war, golden palaces burning, celestial beasts screaming, the endless, absurd cycle of gods playing at being kings. They do not know I have set this in motion, that every whispered doubt, every flicker of paranoia, every accusation of treachery has led to this moment. They believe they fight for honor. They believe they fight for prophecy. But they fight because I told them to. 1,000 spears crash against unbreakable shields, sending ripples through the fabric of existence. I watch as the warbringer, hulking, furious, blind with righteousness, lifts his blade against the Sky King, who wields storms in his hands. They were brothers once. Now, they are stories I have rewritten. A sword finds its mark. The Sky King staggers. The heavens roar in pain. I smile. One down, and not a single prayer will bring him back. It is not enough to kill them. I must erase them. Their names, their myths, their symbols, everything that keeps them real. A god's power is not in their strength, it is in belief. And soon there will be no belief but me. They raise their banners, call forth their armies, unsheath their celestial blades, because they believe this war was always meant to happen, that the heavens were destined to fall in glorious battle. It was not destiny, it was design. My design. I stand at the edge of the battlefield, watching from the ruins of what was once a throne fit for eternity. The divine war unfolds beneath me, a magnificent storm of flame and fury, gods clashing with all the splendor they believe will be sung of in future ages. But there will be no future ages. There will be no one left to sing. A river of light cuts through the battlefield, the war chants of the celestial legions shaking the very fabric of existence. Spears of starfire are cast into the chests of once immortal beings. Shields forged from the bones of the cosmos shatter like sand. The heavens tremble, fracturing beneath the weight of their arrogance. And I do nothing, because I do not need to. The Warbringer moves first. He is strength incarnate, a god of blood and conquest, built for nothing but war. His blade hums with divine judgment as he charges, cutting a path through armies that once bowed at his feet. And then he reaches the Sky King. The king is regal even in battle, wreathed in storms, wielding the fury of creation in his hands. He does not hesitate. Lightning crackles in his palm. He will strike first. He must strike first. He never gets the chance. The Warbringer's blade carves through his breastplate, cleaving through God flesh, through the seat of his power, through everything that once made him infinite. The Sky King staggers, not from pain, not from the wound, but from disbelief. This was not meant to happen. His knees hit the ground. He does not look at his executioner. He looks at me. His lips part, perhaps to curse me, perhaps to call upon the heavens one final time. But no words come, not a curse, not a prayer, nothing, because there is no one left to answer. A god is not supposed to die. That is the problem with gods. They always assume survival is a promise. They were never prepared for me. Something in the firmament cracks. The death of a king is more than a loss. It is an unmaking. The sky, once a perfect lattice of celestial order, begins to distort. Lightning fractures the void, not as rage, but as confusion. The Warbringer stands over the corpse of his greatest rival, sword aloft, reveling in his triumph. "Press forward," he bellows, the fire of war still burning in his chest. He believes he has struck the final blow in a battle foretold by the ancients. But the battle is not ending. It is collapsing. Gods who have ruled since the dawn of time hesitate. They were meant to clash in glory. They were meant to fulfill their roles in prophecy. But what is prophecy without a king to uphold it? The threads of fate begin to fray. I watch them snap, one by one, their ends unraveling into the void. And then the first whispers begin. I planted them long before this moment, long before swords were drawn. Seeds of doubt, buried in the minds of the arrogant. What if this war was not meant to be? What if the old ways were meant to fade? What if we were never gods at all? Doubt is not a hammer. It is not a sword. It is a slow, creeping thing, a gentle breath of wind in a house already rotting from within. And now, for the first time, the gods of this world look around the battlefield and wonder if they are fighting for nothing. The war will end soon, not because a victor will emerge, but because they will all stop believing in their own war. A blade through the heart does not kill a god. Doubt does. And when the last blade is lowered, the last temple reduced to dust, the last name forgotten, there will be nothing left but me. The war is over. But wars do not matter. Not in the long run. Gods do not die by battle alone. They die when no one remembers their names. And I'm about to make sure that happens. A kingdom does not fall when its king dies. It falls when its people stop believing in the throne. The battlefield still smolders. Celestial bodies lie broken, twisted, emptied of the divinity they once held. The Warbringer stands triumphant among the wreckage, his blade raised, his voice lifted in victory. His remaining armies chant his name, their devotion as strong as ever. But even now, as he basks in conquest, the first cracks in his legend have begun to show. Because conquest is not control, and the Warbringer does not understand the difference. I do. I have no need for banners, no need for gold or steel or shattered crowns. My kingdom will not be built on the bodies of the fallen. It will be built on the absence of all others. Names have power. I know this better than anyone. I have watched kings rise and fall on the weight of a whisper. I have seen cities crumble because a prophet changed one word in one book. History is not written in ink or stone. It is written in the minds of men, and it can be unwritten just as easily. So I move among the ruins, past the broken palaces and shattered temples, past the last remnants of those who once ruled this world. I listen, not to the survivors, but to the echoes, the prayers that still linger, the remnants of faith not yet snuffed out. And then, with careful hands, I begin to cut the threads. The sky still bears the scars of war, but it is no longer the heavens that I need to destroy. It is memory. The Warbringer believes he has won. He has declared himself the new king of the divine. His name is sung by what remains of his followers, etched into the ruins of his fallen enemies. But songs fade, ruins crumble. I do not need to kill him. I only need to erase the reason for his existence. So I begin with silence. I travel to the cities of men, to the halls where scholars debate, to the courts where scribes record the tales of war. And I plant a different kind of seed, not a whispered doubt, but a simple question. Why do you still speak of him? At first, they resist, they argue, they recount his conquests, his triumphs, the battles that shaped the heavens. But the moment they are forced to defend his name, something shifts. They hesitate, they wonder, and hesitation is the first step toward forgetting. They do not know that every forgotten name is a wound in reality, and I will ensure that the gods bleed into nothing. He does not realize what is happening, not at first, but gods are not immune to the weight of belief, and when belief begins to wither, so too does the thing it once upheld. The Warbringer stands upon his ruined throne, watching as his armies dwindle, not from battle, but from something worse. Indifference. One by one, his followers stop chanting. Their voices falter. The stories they once told about him feel faded, distant, less real. He calls for war, but fewer hands lift their swords. He bellows his victories, but fewer mouths repeat them. He does not understand. And then, one night, as he sleeps upon his throne, the final moment comes. There is no blade, no execution, no fire, only a whisper, only the quiet death of a god who is no longer needed. He does not wake. The war is a memory now. Soon, it will not even be that. I walk through the ruins of what once was, watching as temples collapse beneath the weight of time, as scholars debate whether the Warbringer was ever real at all. A story, perhaps, they say, an old legend, exaggerated over time. And I smile, because I have seen gods fall to swords, to war, to treachery. But this is the slowest, cruelest death of all. The Warbringer is gone, not because I struck him down, but because no one speaks his name anymore. And soon, I will make sure no one remembers any name but mine. The gods are gone. Their names are dust. Their temples have crumbled. And yet, the world still prays. The void I have created must be filled, but not by force, not by conquest. I do not need to call myself a god. I need only to let them believe I am. I walk through the cities of men, through the temples left barren, through the shrines where candles have burned out and the idols are covered in dust. Their gods are dead, but the people do not know what to do with the silence they have left behind. They still kneel. They still clasp their hands. Their lips still murmur words of prayer. But now, their voices feel like echoes in an empty hall. Because they are speaking to no one. And they are afraid. I do not need to demand their worship. I do not need to proclaim myself divine. I need only to listen. Because mankind has never truly worshipped gods. They have worshipped certainty. It begins in the marketplaces, where merchants and beggars and kings all walk the same streets. I move through the crowd unnoticed at first, just a traveler in a tattered cloak, a man who does not speak unless spoken to. But when I do speak, they listen. Who do you pray to now? I ask them. Some scoff, as if they do not understand the question. Others glance at the temple doors, hesitant, as if expecting someone else to answer first. A woman selling bread finally shrugs. I still pray, she says. To what? I don't know. But the words feel less certain than they once did. I nod. I do not give her an answer, but I let the silence hang long enough for her to fill in the void herself. It does not happen overnight. The unraveling of gods took centuries, but my ascent happens in fractions of that time. It begins as nothing but murmurs. There is a man in white who asks strange questions. He does not say he is a god, but he speaks as if he knows the answers God should give. I heard he healed a sick child with nothing but his hands. He speaks no prophecy, yet I leave him feeling as though I have been told something I always knew. The first time I hear my own name spoken in reverence, it is not by my own mouth, and that is how I know it is working. A famine comes, not a great one, not yet, but enough that people begin looking for someone to blame. The old gods would have answered, storm gods, harvest gods, cruel gods that demanded sacrifice in return for mercy. But there is no one left to beg for rain, and so they turn to me. I am not the one who calls the gathering. They do. The people of the city, desperate for something, anything to fill the silence. The square is filled with men and women who have only half-formed prayers on their lips, prayers with no name to call upon. And when I step into the light, the silence breaks. Some fall to their knees immediately. Others clutch their beads, as if realizing too late that their old faith is no longer there. But they all look at me with the same question in their eyes. They are waiting for me to claim it, to declare myself divine, to speak of visions, of power, of commandments and covenants. But I do not. I simply lift my hands, and when the rain finally comes, it is coincidence. But they do not see coincidence. They see a God. And so, I become one. They call me something new now. They speak of miracles I have not performed, of truths I have not spoken, of prophecies I have not written. But I do not correct them, because reality is not about what is true. Reality is about what is believed, and belief is spreading like fire. Worship is a strange thing. It begins as reverence, then it becomes devotion, then it becomes something else, something harder to control, something with a life of its own. I have not called myself a god, but now the world has decided it for me. It spreads, slow at first, then all at once. It takes hold not because it is forced, but because it fills a space in the mind that cannot stand to be empty. And I have emptied everything. The old gods are gone, their names forgotten, their stories faded into whispers that will not last another generation. But humanity does not function in silence. They are creatures of meaning, of structure, of stories. And so, in the absence of gods, they do what mortals have always done. They create one. It happens without my permission, without my order. They do not ask. They do not wait. They simply begin. At first, it is just a shrine, a small thing, a gesture more than a structure. A flat stone placed in the city square, the same place where I stood in the rain. Someone has carved a single word into it. My name. Not the name I was born with. Not the name I chose for myself. The name they have given me. I stand before it one evening, my hands hidden in the folds of my cloak, watching as a child places a candle beside the inscription. She bows her head, whispering something I cannot hear. A prayer. To me. I do not stop her. I do not speak. But when she lifts her eyes to mine, I do something small but deliberate. I nod, and that is enough. By morning, there are 3 stones. By the next week, 10. By the end of the month, the foundation of a temple has been laid. It is strange to watch your own myth take shape. They build it with their own hands. No king funds its construction. No empire carves its pillars from stolen stone. It is made by the desperate, by the forgotten, by the ones who need something bigger than themselves to believe in. It grows without design. I do not interfere. I do not tell them what it should be. And yet, when the walls rise, they are inscribed with words I have never spoken. He lifted his hand, and the storm obeyed. His voice calmed the restless, and they found peace. The old gods vanished, for he willed it so. I never said these things, but they believe I did. That is all that matters. When the temple is completed, they ask me to stand inside it. They do not demand. They do not beg. They only look at me with the quiet expectation of those who have already decided what is true. I step through its doors, walking across stone that was placed for me, past symbols that now belong to me, beneath a roof that exists because of me. I am not certain what I expect to feel, but as I stand at the altar, something shifts. Not in me, in them. There is an inhale, a collective breath held in anticipation, the kind that only happens when people are in the presence of something holy. And it is in that moment that I understand something I did not fully grasp before. It does not matter whether or not I am a god. I have already become one. They do not worship what is real. They worship what feels real. And I have made myself the only real thing left. And so the temple does not close. The doors remain open, and one by one they kneel. Faith spreads like fire, but fire does not only consume. It provokes fear. It breeds resistance. It creates those who would rather burn than kneel. I have watched gods fall to war. But now, for the first time, I wonder, does faith demand blood? They whisper in the streets. Not all who watch me see a savior. Some see a liar, a thief, a false thing wrapped in the robes of something greater. And now, for the first time, a voice rises louder than a whisper. He is not divine. The words come from a man standing atop the temple steps, just beneath the great doors carved in my name. He is old, with the sharp, unyielding face of a man who has never questioned what he believes. He is not divine, he says again, turning to the gathered crowd. His voice is steady, unwavering. The gods we worshipped for generations have vanished, and now he stands in their place, not because he is holy, but because we were desperate. The words hang in the air, and for the first time, the crowd does not move as one. There is hesitation, small, inconsequential, but I have seen what hesitation can do. I have used it to unravel empires. I do not speak. I let them wrestle with the thought. I let them doubt. Because faith is not about knowing. It is about needing. If I give them silence, the ones who believe in me will fill it for themselves. And they do. You say he is not divine, a woman calls from the steps, her voice filled with a sharp, brittle anger. And yet, when the rains failed, who stood in the square and brought them back? Coincidence, the man spits. And the child who could not walk, the one who touched his hand and stood. Lies, parlor tricks. The crowd stirs. The old man does not move. He stands rigid because he knows what I know. He has already lost. It does not matter whether I performed miracles. It matters that they believe I did. Faith does not survive on its own. It must be protected. And I see it now, what the old gods must have seen when their temple stood at the height of their power. Doubt is not a hammer. Doubt is a crack, and cracks spread. The first heretic is standing before me, and I know that what I do next will shape everything that follows. If I let him speak, others will come. If I silence him, I will become what the old gods were, a ruler made not of faith, but of fear. I do not decide right away. I wait, I watch, and then someone in the crowd moves. A stone flies. It strikes the old man's temple. He stumbles, gripping the steps. Blood blooms between his fingers. I did not throw it. I did not order it. And yet, it has begun. The second stone comes from a younger man, his face contorted in fury. Then another, and another. And the first heretic falls to his knees. He looks up at me, breath ragged, eyes burning with something I cannot name. It is not hatred. It is not fear. It is pity. And then he is gone. I do not move. I do not stop them. The first heretic dies on the temple steps. And with him, something else dies too. Some part of me that was not yet a god. The crowd is still. And then, as if something has been decided, they bow. All of them. They bow not just out of reverence, but out of fear. And I know in that moment that faith is no longer just belief. Faith is power. And power always carries a cost. Belief is no longer a whisper. It is a sword. I did not raise it. I did not forge it. But it has been lifted in my name. And now I must decide, will I silence it or let it carve the world anew? It begins in a village beyond the city, a small place, barely worth remembering, where the last remnants of the old faith still burn their incense, still carve their offerings, still whisper names that should have faded long ago. A place that does not kneel, a place that does not speak my name. And that, it seems, is enough. When the first flames rise against the night, I am not there. I do not see the torches thrown, the doors broken, the screams swallowed by the wind. But when the morning comes, I see the smoke. The temple, not mine, but one of the old ones, has been reduced to nothing but char and embers. The symbols on its stone altar have been defaced, scratched out, rewritten. And where the old god's name once stood, there is now only one word. Mine. I should have known. Faith is not static. It is not gentle. It is not something that exists without consequence. It moves. It devours. It consumes. I did not tell them to burn that temple. I did not tell them to kill the priests inside. But they did. Because they understood something before I did. A god who does not fight for his own name will be replaced. And so, the first war has begun. I hear the news first from a messenger. He comes into my temple at dusk, kneeling before me, face flushed from the journey. He does not tremble. He does not beg for forgiveness. He is proud. The village stood against you, he says, so we cleansed it. I do not respond. He waits, watching me, his hand still stained with red. I wonder what he expects me to say. Praise, rebuke, or does he simply want to know what kind of God I will choose to be? This is the first act of violence in my name. It will not be the last, because faith is not just belief. Faith is a claim. Faith is a dividing line. Faith is a battlefield. And I have built something too great to stand without blood to hold it in place. The messenger is still kneeling, waiting. His hands are still bloody. The air is thick with waiting. Faith is no longer just belief. It is fire. It is conquest. It is blood on the hands of men who whisper my name. I have not called for war, but war has come anyway. And now the world waits for me to speak, because a God is only real when he answers. The messenger is still kneeling. His hands are still stained with blood. The silence is heavier than the temple walls, heavier than the weight of the world pressing against my name, heavier than the moment before a blade is drawn. He killed for me. He burned for me. Not because I told him to, because he believed it was right. And now he wants to know if I believe it was right too. I should condemn it. I should say no. I should say this is not my way, that I am not like the old gods, that faith should not be carried on the tip of a blade. But that would be a lie. Not because I desire blood, not because I want war, but because I know what happens to gods who refuse to protect their own name. Because gods do not rule by kindness, they rule by survival. And the world does not belong to those who wait for permission. It belongs to those who take it. I step forward. The messenger looks up. I place my hand on his head. He does not flinch. Rise, I say. And he does. He looks at me, waiting for judgment, waiting for a name to be given to what he has done. And so, I give him one. What you have done is righteous. The words echo, not just in the temple, but in the world beyond it, because the world is listening, because a God has spoken. And once a God speaks, his words cannot be undone. It spreads like fire, carried by tongues that have waited too long for certainty. He called it righteous. He did not condemn it. He placed his hand on the warrior's head and blessed him. The old ways are over. He has decreed it. I never decreed anything, but it does not matter, because reality is not about what is true. Reality is about what is believed. And so, the war begins, not with a decree, not with an army, but with a whisper mistaken for law. I have spoken, and now men march in my name. I did not tell them to take up arms. I did not tell them to wage war. But I placed my hand on a man who had already killed, and in doing so, I gave him the thing all warriors crave: justification. They do not fight for power. They do not fight for land. They fight because they believe I have willed it so, and belief is stronger than steel. The city of Vaskar stands at the edge of my growing empire. It is old, older than the wars that shaped it, older than the gods who once reigned from its high temples. And it has refused me. They have heard the stories. They have seen the smoke rise from villages that resisted. They know my name, but they do not bow. We do not kneel to false things, their king declares. He still believes his gods will save him. He does not yet understand. There are no gods left but me. The first attack is swift. It is not called war, not yet. War requires armies, banners, kings declaring their intent. This is something else. A movement, a crusade, a belief sharpened into swords and carried into the streets. They do not wait for my command. They do not need it. My words have already become law in their minds. They strike in the night. They burn the temples first, the houses next. By the time the sun rises, the kingdom has already begun to fall. They bring him to me. The king of Vaskar, the man who would not kneel, is now on his knees before my throne. His face is bruised, his robes torn, but his eyes still burn with defiance. "You are no God," he says. I do not answer, because it does not matter what I am. It only matters what they believe. And they believe this man no longer has a right to his crown. They are waiting, all of them, my followers, the ones who have killed for me, the ones who will kill again if I allow it. They wait for my judgment. If I let this king live, it will be seen as weakness. If I order his death, it will be seen as righteous, a lesson to all who would resist. I look at the kneeling man, at the war behind him, at the city that still smolders, at the banners that now bear my name, and I speak. There was a time when I was merely a name whispered in the streets, a figure on the edges of belief, a man who did not call himself divine, but let others do it for him. But now, I am something else. A king kneels before me, and the world waits for my judgment. Whatever I say next will not just shape the fate of this man, it will shape the laws of gods and kings forever. The king kneels in the ruined temple. The fire outside still burns. His people are dead or fled. The banners of his gods have been pulled from their places and replaced with mine. And yet, he does not bow his head. "You are no God," he tells me again. His voice is hoarse, but the fire in it has not gone out. I study him. I see the defiance in his eyes, the thing that made him resist even when he knew the walls of his kingdom were crumbling. He does not beg for his life, because he does not believe I have the power to take it. That is why he has lost. It does not matter whether I am divine. It does not matter whether I command the storms or shape the fates. I am the one who will decide whether he walks out of this temple or is carried out in pieces. And that is power. They are waiting. My followers, my warriors, my scribes. Their faces are expectant, their eyes filled with something far heavier than devotion, faith. They will take whatever I say and make it law. I see the paths before me. If I kill him, I become the god of conquest. The first kingdom falls. More will follow. The world will see that those who do not kneel are erased. A warning carved in blood. If I let him live, I appear weak. He will become a symbol of resistance. My followers may question my willingness to defend my name. Doubt will fester. Cracks will form. If I break him, I become something greater than a god of war. A dead king is forgotten. A broken one is remembered. I will not just take his throne. I will take his belief. He will become proof that even kings kneel before me, and I know which path I will choose. I descend the temple steps, moving toward the kneeling king. He does not lower his gaze. "You are no God," he says for the last time. I do not strike him. I do not raise my voice. I only whisper. "Then prove it. Stand." The silence is absolute. He tries. He pushes against the weight of his own defiance. He clenches his teeth, his body trembling. But his legs do not move. Not because of magic, not because of fate, but because fear is a chain heavier than steel. And for the first time, I see it. The flicker of doubt in his eyes. He knows that even if he stood, it would not matter. The world has already decided what is true. The gods are gone. I remain. And so the king kneels. His head bows, his fists unclench. His voice, when it comes, is nothing but a whisper. You are God. The temple doors are thrown open. The people outside, his people, my people, watch as their king emerges. He does not speak. He does not resist. He kneels before them, not as a ruler, but as a man who has seen something greater than himself. And the moment they see it, they do the same. One by one, they fall to their knees. The kingdom of Vaskar does not burn. It does not crumble. It kneels. They will write about this moment. The scribes will call it the first conversion. Not a war, not a conquest, but a surrender. And it will be remembered. Not because I killed a king, but because I made one kneel. The first kingdom has fallen, not by fire, not by steel, but by belief. The world has seen a king kneel, and now the world wonders, who will be next? Some will bow before I arrive, some will resist, and some will try to kill a god. But the truth remains the same. There is no war left to fight. There is only inevitability. News of Vaskar's fall spreads faster than any army could march. Merchants carry it with their wares. Scribes etch it into parchment before it can fade from memory. Messengers whisper it into the ears of rulers who do not sleep as easily as they once did. The king of Vaskar knelt. It is not a story. It is a warning. Some rulers begin to prepare, not for war, for surrender. Others sharpen their blades, believing that steel can kill an idea. They do not yet understand. A god is not a man. A god does not need a throne. A god is carried on the breath of his believers. And I am everywhere now. In the north, there is a city called Durath. It is strong, but not unbreakable. Its lords hold their power not through faith, but through gold. They see what happened to Vaskar. They read the omens in the sky, in the way their people whisper my name, in the way the old temples are already crumbling, even before my armies arrive. When my messengers reach their gates, there is no resistance, no hesitation. The city doors are thrown open, and the lords kneel before they are asked to. We welcome the one true God, they say. There is no need for war. And so, there is none. Their banners fall, mine rise in their place. Faith has conquered them before a single sword was drawn. This is how it begins, but not all kneel. There are those who still cling to the old ways, to the gods who are already dead, to the idea that faith is something that can be bargained with. And so, the first true war begins. Not the raids of fanatics, not the cleansing of a single village. A war with banners. A war with walls and armies and kings who refuse to kneel. They call me a false god. They call my followers fanatics, traitors, liars. But their words do not matter, because words do not stop fire, and faith burns hotter than anything else. It is no longer a question of whether I will be worshipped. It is only a question of how long it will take for the world to accept it. This war will end, not with treaties, not with negotiations, but with a silence where the names of old gods used to be. And when that silence comes, the world will not remember what it was like before I was here, because there will be no one left to remember. I have watched gods die, not by war, not by steel, but by being forgotten. They do not die in battle. They die in silence. They die when no one speaks their name. But one name still lingers. One temple still stands. One god still waits to be erased. And I am going to erase him. It is hidden, deep in the mountains, where the old roads have crumbled and the forests have reclaimed what once belonged to men. It should not exist, but it does. The last worshippers of the last god have gathered here, kneeling before an altar that has not yet fallen, whispering prayers to something that should no longer be real. They do not fight, they do not flee. They kneel, knowing what is coming, knowing I have come to finish what I started. The priest stands at the altar. He is old, older than the war, older than the gods I have already erased. His hands tremble, but his voice does not. "You have won," he says. It is not a plea. It is not a question. It is a truth. But tell me this, God of the new world, do you feel their absence? His voice echoes against the temple walls, against the last remnants of a faith that will not exist after this night. I do not answer because I do not know. The temple will burn. The walls will crumble. The last worshippers will be scattered, lost, forced to kneel before me or be swallowed by history. But first, the name must be erased. I walk to the altar where his name is written in stone, in ink, in prayers that have not yet died. And I place my hand upon it. I press my fingers against the name and I whisper, "Be forgotten." The letters fade. The stone cracks and the last god is gone. The temple burns behind me. The sky is dark, filled with smoke, filled with the ashes of gods. I stand at the edge of the mountain, looking down at a world that belongs to me now. There is no one left to challenge me, no one left to whisper a different name. I have not just won. I have become the only thing left to worship, and yet I listen to the wind, to the silence, and for the first time I wonder, what does a god pray to when he is the last one left? The war is over. The world is mine. No kings resist me. No gods remain. The temples stand in my name. The prayers are whispered to no one but me. I have not just rewritten history. I have become it. But there is something in the air, something I cannot yet name. I listen for the sound of my own victory, but all I hear is silence. The world moves beneath me. The cities still stand, the fields still yield, the rivers still flow. There is no rebellion, no resistance, no whispers of another god rising in the dark corners of the earth. The people wake, they work, they kneel, they worship, and yet something is missing. At first I cannot name it, but then I realize there is no fear, not of war, not of heretics, not of the gods who came before me, because there is no one left to fight, because I am no longer an idea to be defended. I am a law, and laws do not inspire devotion. They inspire obedience. The first time I walk through the great temple, I expect to feel something, a surge of power, a resonance in the air, something divine. Instead, I see men and women kneeling, but their prayers are hollow, not because they doubt me, but because there is nothing left to doubt. Faith does not thrive in certainty. It thrives in the unknown, in the places where fear and hope are woven together, where belief is tested. But I am no longer a test. I am a fact. And facts do not inspire love. They inspire habit. I sit upon my throne. There are no wars to fight, no enemies to silence, no rulers to break. The scribes write of me, but the words do not change. They are the same hymns, the same prayers, the same stories that have already been told. There are no new revelations, no new miracles, because a God who has nothing left to prove has nothing left to give. I have shaped the world in my image, and now, for the first time, I wonder, did I create a world that no longer needs me? The world kneels, the temples stand, the prayers rise, and yet something is missing. Not all at once, not in defiance, but in the quiet, in the empty spaces between devotion, it is not rebellion. It is something worse. It is indifference. At first, it is so small that I do not see it. A pause before a prayer, a hesitation before a kneeling man bows his head, a candle lit, not in devotion, but because it has always been lit. It is not heresy. It is not disbelief. It is habit without meaning. A God is not just worshipped. A God is believed in. And belief is something that must burn. But I feel no fire in them. Only routine. There was a time when people begged for my favor, for rain, for safety, for salvation. Now they do not ask. Not because they have lost faith, but because they expect. I have become a guarantee, a law of the universe, no different from the turning of the sun or the rising of the tides. And who prays to the inevitable? It happens in the eastern city of Kareth. A small thing. A man passes the great temple. The bells call for prayer. The others stop, lower their heads, murmur the words they have always murmured. But he does not kneel, not in defiance, not in protest. He simply keeps walking. No one notices at first, not even the temple guards. But then it happens again, and again, and again. Not rebellion, something worse, apathy. For the first time in an age, I feel something I do not recognize. Not doubt, not weakness, something far colder. Something I once used to kill the gods before me, forgetting. The people still kneel, but some do not. The prayers still rise, but some mouths are silent. The faith still stands, but it is no longer growing. And I know this is how gods die. Not with war, not with steel, but with a world that no longer cares. There was a time when my name was spoken in every breath, carried in every prayer, etched into the stone of every temple. But now, a child has been born, and for the first time in an age, the name given to him is not mine. The world does not shatter, the sky does not burn, and that is what terrifies me most of all. It happens in the city of Erith, beneath the shadow of the great temple. A child is born. His mother cradles him, her hands trembling with something ancient, something sacred. A priest leans in, ready to speak the only name that should exist. My name. But before he can, the mother whispers first. A name. A name that is not mine. A name that is not even a prayer. A name that does not belong to the old gods or the new. A simple human name. A name with no divinity at all. For a moment, the temple is silent. I expect something to happen. I expect the air to shift, the walls to crack, the ground to rebel against the weight of a world that has forgotten. But nothing happens. The world moves forward. The priests do not punish her. The scribes do not erase the name from their records. The bells still ring. The prayers still rise. And yet, something is different. Because for the first time I was expected, and I was not chosen. This is how it starts. Not in fire, not in rebellion, not in war, but in a name that means nothing but itself. This is how gods become myths, not by force, but by being slowly, quietly replaced. I have ruled the world, and now, for the first time, I wonder if I am beginning to lose it. There was a time when my name was spoken in desperate whispers, in urgent cries, in voices trembling with need. Prayers were not just words, they were pleas, they were hunger, they were belief. But now, I listen, and for the first time, there is nothing to hear. The world does not need me, and I wonder, have I already begun to disappear? I sit within my temple, listening. The world outside moves as it always has. The bells toll, the priests chant, the masses kneel, but their voices do not rise in desperation. They do not beg for rain. They do not plead for mercy. They do not ask for anything at all. And I realize they no longer believe I will answer, not because they doubt me, but because they no longer expect miracles. Once, my name was spoken with fire, with hunger, with trembling lips. Now, it is recited with the same certainty as the turning of the seasons, not as a question, not as hope, but as a fact that no longer needs proving. I have made myself a law, and a law is not worshipped. A law is obeyed. In a distant village, a child lies sick. Her mother kneels beside her bed, whispering my name. I hear it. I listen. I could answer. I could bring the child back to health, as I have done 1,000 times before. But before I do, the mother rises. She does not beg. She does not wait for a sign. She goes to the well, fetches water, finds herbs. She does not need a god. She has already learned to heal without one. And when the child wakes, it is not a miracle. It is simply life, and that is worse than death. I feel something I have not felt since the days before I was worshipped, something I do not yet know how to name. It is not pain. It is not fear. It is absence, a slow, creeping thing, a hollow space where once there was something divine. I still exist. I am still worshipped. And yet, for the first time, I wonder, what happens to a God who is no longer needed? There was a time when my temples were filled with voices, when the sound of worship was as endless as the turning of the stars. But today, I walk into a temple where my name was once carved into the walls, where my name was once spoken with reverence, and I hear nothing. I did not know that silence could be so heavy. I did not know that absence could be so loud. The city of Elis is not burned. Its gates still stand. Its people still live. The temple dedicated to my name still reaches toward the sky. And yet, as I walk through its doors, I feel something I have never felt before. Emptiness. The halls are dark. The incense has burned out. The great altar, once covered in offerings, is bare. There are no priests, no scribes, no voices raised in prayer, only dust where devotion used to be. I walk the length of the hall, my footsteps the only sound. I touch the walls, the stones still marked with my words, my law, my name. I am still here, but the people are not. And for the first time, I ask myself a question I do not want to ask. Does a temple belong to a god? Or does it belong to the worshippers who fill it? Because if no one stands here, if no one kneels, if no voices rise in my name, then is this still a temple? Or is it just an empty building waiting to become something else? At the center of the hall, my name is carved into the great altar. Once, it was touched with reverence. Once, it was spoken by thousands. Now, it is covered in dust. I reach out. My fingers brush against the letters. And I see it. The edges of my name beginning to fade. Not erased, not destroyed. Simply worn down by time, by air, by neglect. It is still there, but it is less than it was. And so am I. This is how gods vanish, not in fire, not in war, but in silence, in the empty halls of temples that once echoed with belief, in the dust that gathers on altars that once held offerings, in the way a name, once sacred, can fade without ever being struck down. And I wonder, am I already fading too? There was a time when my name was spoken in desperate cries, when the faithful knelt with trembling hands, knowing that I was listening. But tonight, a man kneels before an altar, speaks my name, and for the first time, I do not answer, not because I do not hear him, but because I do not know if I still can. The temple is nearly empty. A single man kneels before the altar, his hands clasped, his head bowed. His voice is low, uncertain, but it still carries through the hall. Great One, hear me. I listen. My son is sick. I have done all I can. The healers have done all they can. If you will grant me your favor, if you will bless him, I will serve you until my dying breath. This is not a test of faith. This is not a heretic. This is a believer kneeling in the last flickering light of devotion. And for the first time, I hesitate. I could heal the boy. I could bring him back from the edge of death, as I have done 1,000 times before. But something stops me. Not doubt, not refusal. Something colder. Something I do not yet understand. It is not that I will not answer. It is that I do not know if I still can. I reach into the place where my power has always been, where my divinity once surged like fire. And I feel nothing. I am still here. I am still worshipped. And yet, the connection is weaker, not broken, not gone, just fading. The man kneels for hours. He pleads, he cries. He speaks my name again and again, as if the weight of it will bring an answer. But I do not speak. I do not move. And in the end, the man stands. He does not curse me. He does not turn away in anger. He simply leaves, because he no longer expects a God to answer. And I watch him go, knowing this is worse than betrayal. This is forgetting. It is not an execution. It is not rebellion. It is not war. It is a man walking away from an altar, whispering my name for the last time. And I realize this is how it ends. Not with fire, not with war, but with prayers that are never answered. And soon, with prayers that are never spoken at all. There was a time when my name was carved into every wall, etched into every stone, spoken with reverence by those who built the world in my image. But today, I stand before a temple that was once mine, and for the first time, my name is no longer there. They did not destroy it. They did not deface it. They simply replaced it, and that is worse than being erased. The city of Ormenas has always been faithful. Its temples were among the first to bear my name. Its people were among the first to kneel. But today, when I walk through its streets, I feel something off. The banners still hang, the bells still toll, the temple doors are still open, but when I step inside, I see it. The altar has been restored, the carvings have been cleaned, and my name is gone, not replaced by another god, not defiled, simply missing, as if it had never been there at all. The priests move about their duties. The people kneel, just as they always have. But they do not speak my name. Not in rebellion, not in rejection. They simply no longer think to say it. I listen, I wait. Surely someone will whisper it. Surely someone will remember. But no one does. They pray for the harvest. They pray for health. They pray for their children. But they do not pray to me. Because my name has already become unnecessary. I stand before the altar. I reach out, my fingers tracing the smooth stone where my name once was. I whisper, low, careful, certain. I am here. No one looks up. I am still here. The priests continue their work. The kneeling remain kneeling. No one stirs. No one hears me. Because I am no longer something they listen for. Because they do not know I am still watching. This is how it happens, not in fire, not in war, not in defiance, but in a name that simply ceases to be spoken. I am still here, but I am already being replaced. And soon, there will be nothing left of me but silence. There was a time when my name was spoken with reverence, carved into stone, whispered in the dark. It was the first thing people learned, the last thing they uttered before death. But today, I reach for it. I let it form on my tongue, and nothing comes. My name is gone, not just from the world, but from me. I stand at the altar of a temple that no longer belongs to me. Once, my name was inscribed in the stone, untouched by time. Now, it is worn down, faded at the edges, dissolving into dust. I reach out. My fingers trace where the letters once were. I whisper, but the sound does not come. My name, the name that built this world, the name that erased the gods before me, the name that was once law. It is gone. I cannot remember it. At first I tell myself it is nothing, a fleeting moment, a slip of the mind. I have existed for ages. Surely I cannot forget myself. I close my eyes, searching for the sound, the shape, the weight of the name that once filled the heavens. I search for the power in it, but there is nothing. Not silence, emptiness, because a name is not just a word. A name is recognition. A name is memory. A name is what binds a god to the world. And I have lost mine. I whisper again, desperate. I am. But the words do not follow. The walls do not tremble. The world does not stop. Nothing changes. Because I do not know what comes after. I was once everything. I was the one who unmade gods, who shaped history, who rewrote the fabric of belief itself. But now, I stand in a temple that once bore my name, and I am nothing but a shadow without a voice. I am still here, but what am I without a name? What am I without something to anchor me to the world? And then I realize I am already disappearing, not just from the prayers of men, but from myself. The world has moved on. The cities still stand. The rivers still flow. The people still kneel, but not to me. They no longer whisper my name, no longer carve it into stone. My temples crumble, my altars gather dust. But there is one voice, one last believer who still remembers. And I know, when they are gone, so am I. The last worshipper is an old woman. She kneels in a temple that no one visits anymore. The last temple that still bears my name. Her hands tremble, but she folds them anyway. Her voice is weak, but she speaks anyway. Great One, I am still here. I listen. I have not forgotten you. I watch. Even if no one else speaks your name, I will. She whispers it. My name. The name I had lost. And for a moment, I exist. She is the only thing keeping me here. Not the temples, not the statues, not the laws carved into stone. Only her voice, only her belief. I stand beside her, unseen, untouched by time. She does not know I am watching. She does not need to, because she believes, and belief is the last thread keeping me from disappearing. I do not speak to her. I do not answer, because I do not know if I still can. I feel it now, how thin the space between being and not being has become. How fragile I am, how easily I could simply cease. And when she is gone, I know that I will. I do not know how much time passes. It could be days, it could be years. But one night, the woman does not come to the temple. I wait. The next day, she does not come. I wait And then, in the quiet, I know. She is gone, and with her, so am I. The wind moves through the empty temple, across the stone where my name was once carved. I try to speak, but there is no one left to hear. I try to exist, but there is nothing left to believe. And so, for the last time, I am forgotten, and I am no more. Once I was everything. My name was law, my will was history. My voice was the voice of the world. There was no prayer I did not hear, no temple that did not bear my name, no kingdom that did not kneel. But today, there is nothing. No prayers, no temples, no name. And I'm not sure if I was ever here at all. The cities still stand, the rivers still flow, the sun rises, indifferent to the absence of a God who once claimed to hold it in place. The world has not stopped, not for me, not for my temples, now empty, not for my name, now unsaid. I walk through a marketplace where once merchants sold idols in my image. The stalls are still here, but the idols are not. Now they sell grain, cloth, jewelry, things that matter, things that are real. I reach out to touch a woman's shoulder as she passes. She does not shudder. She does not turn. She does not feel me at all, because I am no longer here. I step into a temple that once belonged to me. My name was carved into the walls. It is gone. I stand where the great altar once stood. It is gone. I whisper my name, though I do not remember it. Nothing answers. Not the walls, not the sky, not myself, because there is no self left. I close my eyes. There is no voice in my head. There is no shape to my form, no weight to my presence, no name to cling to. I open my mouth, but no words come, because there is no one left to speak them, because I do not remember what I was supposed to say. It is not death. Death is something that happens to a thing that once was, but I am not dying. I am unbeing. And as the last fragments of me dissolve into the quiet, I realize the truth that should have always been clear. A God is only a God for as long as someone believes in him. And I am alone, and I am forgotten. And now, at last, I am nothing.